So let's talk to James Heale, political correspondent of The Spectator. James, what's going on out there? They can't handle it.
Well, I think most of the Western world is in meltdown, trying to process this result. And as you can say, some aren't handling it very well, Mike.
They're really not. But it's sort of teenage politics time, isn't it? You know, I mean, you know, the idea that, first of all, Oprah Winfrey gets up just on the eve of polling day in America to say that if you don't vote Kamala Harris in, this will be the last chance you ever have to vote in a democratic election because, you know, Donald Trump is a dictator, he's a fascist, and he wants to take away your rights to a general election. I mean, it's complete and utter madness. It's complete rubbish. And I don't understand how anyone can take these people seriously anymore.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a very busy 4 years for Donald Trump then, isn't it? With his stupid fascism and stripping everyone of their right to vote. I think, look, I mean, well, the problem is, when you reach for the hyperbolic rhetoric so quickly and so easily, where else are you left to go? And I think that a lot of Democrats, I've seen the last 24 hours or so, have been putting out variations of statements suggesting that somehow it wasn't Kamala who let the voters down, the voters let Kamala down. Yeah. And that's a very worrying and dangerous sentiment because it, first of all, blames the voters and it refuses to take any responsibility for what was a very weak campaign and a very weak candidate.
Well, exactly right. And I mean, that's precisely what the front page of the Daily Mirror seems to have done. You know, Daily Mirror, of course, which is now desperate to put anything on the front page which doesn't involve Labour and the Labour Party screw-ups that they're making every single day. What have they done again? It says, Trump returns to power. Donald Trump swept to power yesterday amid fears he will be even more divisive and brutal than in his first spell in the White House. Well, I'm sorry, I don't remember him being particularly divisive and brutal in his first 4 years in the White House. And they seem to have rewritten history here.
Well, I think what's so striking is that the third attempt, Donald Trump has won the popular vote. Just before going on, I looked at the latest polling and it suggested, I think it was 51.5 or something like that %, which is an impressive margin.
It's a very impressive margin. I mean, there's no room for doubt. There's no room for, you know, maybe there's a few mistakes here and there. Maybe they should have a recount. No chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think, is both a testament to how Trump had been able to come back over the last 4 years and an indictment of the Biden-Harris decisions. First of all, I think you were earlier talking about Trump going gaga. I mean, you know, obviously we've had Joe Biden in the White House the past 4 years acting in a sort of weekend at Bernie scenario. And then we've had, you know, Kamala Harris, who clearly was just never able to answer difficult questions. She was able to tell us why we shouldn't vote for Donald Trump. She was never able to tell us why she should vote for Kamala Harris. No. And I think that the Dems have a lot of thinking to do over the next 4 years about how they gifted this away to Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely right. The whole situation is hilariously, you know, emphatic for the likes of Rory Stewart. I mean, Rory Stewart, I think we might as well just play this because, you know, this is a guy who does a podcast with Alistair Campbell called The Rest is Politics. If I was Rory Stewart, and if you were Rory Stewart, James, I suspect you would go into hiding for probably at least the next decade because he was very confident just before anybody asked him to say, oh, Kamala Harris is going to win. Forget about all the polls. Forget about the way that the polls are being run because they're too frightened to be too positive about Kamala Harris. I know for a fact, and not only do I know it for a fact, I'm going to put loads of money on it that she's going to win. And unfortunately, of course, she didn't. Here's what he had to say.
I got it totally wrong. I thought Kamala Harris would win, and I believe she would win comfortably. I thought it would be over quite quickly. Despite the polls showing 50-50. Why? Well, I can repeat my arguments. They were technical arguments about young African-American voters and how they would turn out, her ground game, the money, the performance of Biden's administration. It's all turned out to be wrong, completely wrong.
Sorry, forgive me for laughing. I mean, who do these people think they are? And how did they get it so wrong? Because, I mean, I knew Donald Trump would win. I didn't think it would be quite as big as this. I'm not going to pretend that I'm Nostradamus. But I knew, knowing the people that I know in America, talking to my friends, talking to my family who live over there, I could tell that Donald Trump was going to get back into power. And how did they miss that?
Well, it's a mix of arrogance, entitlement, and a refusal to face facts. I mean, these people surround themselves with the data they want to look at. They don't talk to one half of the aisle. And I think that American media is very different from British media. I was out there earlier this year for the election, and you just see it, even in the space of a few weeks, there are two different conversations happening. And if you plug yourself into only one conversation, where, of course, up until June, they were all insisting that Biden was a young, strapping lad who was going to serve for another 4 years, you are going to deny yourself hearing what half the electorate are hearing. And I think that anyone who went into this election pretty confidently saying they knew what was going to happen, I think was going on a wing and a prayer, and Rory Stewart's clearly done that. And what I think great so much, Mike, it wasn't so much that he was confident, it was that he was dismissive of anyone who was saying journalists were after sensationalism. He was going after Andrew Neil, saying he was completely wrong about it, being close for Trump, etc. And I hope that he goes away, and in the words of Clement Attlee, a period of silence on your part will be welcome.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk about matters a bit closer to home. We've got, I think Keir Starmer was off in Hungary today, going to meet his other great new right-wing friend, Viktor Orban. I don't imagine that's going down too well in old Communist Party headquarters, but, we'll see how he gets along. But he had to confront Kerry Badenoch yesterday for the first time, Prime Minister's questions, because she's now, of course, the new leader of the Tory party. Let's see what she had to say.
I would like to start by congratulating President-elect Trump on his impressive victory this morning. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary met him in September. Did the Foreign Secretary take that opportunity to apologise for making derogatory and scatological references, including, and I quote, Trump is not only a woman-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath, he is also a profound threat to the international order. And if he did not apologise, will the Prime Minister do so now on his behalf?
The Foreign Secretary and I did meet President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago for dinner for about a couple of hours, and we discussed a number of issues of global significance.
The Prime Minister did not distance himself from the remarks made by the Foreign Secretary, and I'm very sure that President Trump will soon be calling to thank him for sending all of those North London Labour activists to campaign for his opponent.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying yesterday, it was great that those 100 Labour activists went over there to help them gain 20% of the vote, just like they did back home.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine that 100 American Democrats turned up at the doors of the Red Wall and urged them all to vote? You told them to slam the door in their face.
Yeah, exactly. I mean hi, I'm from New York. Vote Labour. Sorry?
I mean, also, the best thing was, there was 2 LinkedIn posts. The first one was even better than that. It said, let's teach the Democrats how to win like Labour. And I thought, the Labour Party, famously the party which specialises in drawing defeat from the jaws of victory and has done for 100 years. And it was just a laughing stock.
Yeah, absolutely right. Final question for you. Very amusing to see the Daily Mail today. 2 stories that rather tickled me. One is that the university hike in fees by Rachel Reeves is likely to end up costing us actually £90 million a year because people will be going to further debt, and many of those debts will not ever be repaid to the Exchequer. And secondly, the Foreign Office is now urging private schools to give a special dispensation to diplomats abroad so they don't have to be charged VAT for their children going to boarding school.
I mean, yeah, on the first one, graduate finance is a mess. I think it was even calculated about 5-10 years ago that 45% of loans will never be repaid. This is a successive failure of multiple administrations. And on the second point about private schools, I mean, this is why it's never been introduced, because this policy has more holes than a Swiss cheese. The problem is you then have to have, for instance, special exemptions for military students whose parents joined the army thinking that they were going to get their kids a better education, and also diplomats as well. And you add a sort of 5 million discount here, 5 million discount there. I reckon you're going to see tens of millions, if that, made from this policy, and you'll see school closures, and it really probably won't be worth it. But Labour will push on because they love the politics of it. Yeah,
because they think they're right. And if they haven't learned from Donald Trump that you can't start lecturing the public because you will get voted out, they never will learn. James, very good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed, as ever.